Let's welcome in our good friend Bob Vanderplotz. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing?
I'm a little fired up. All right.
I heard that. I had team members going to the bathroom going, you got to get in there and check out what Dace is doing.
Late last week, some interesting polling news broke from Gallup.
Sure.
And Gallup found support for so-called gay marriage among Republicans has plummeted 15 points since 2002. It is barely at 40% right now. And we had a little bit of a conversation about this late last week, and we surmised it certainly isn't a result of all the fire-breathing righteousness collectively coming from America's pulpits, right? I just ain't coming. That ain't the reason why.
Yeah.
So we came to the conclusion, just again having a very cursory conversation amongst the three of us before the weekend. We came to the conclusion this has to. The only thing we could come up with is that all of the excesses that people like you and me warned about a couple of decades ago, everything that we warned about. Well, there's a reason previous eras put these lines in place. If you remove these lines, blank will happen, blank will happen, blank will happen. We were accused of slippery slope arguments, which is exactly what we were doing.
Red herrings.
Yes, and the reason why the spirit of the age hates slippery slope arguments is because they're undefeated. They never lose. We always end up sprinting towards Gomorrah, not just even slouching. Okay, and I just can only come to the conclusion that this precipitous drop is because of the debauched excesses that we warned about, and even some things that we didn't even contemplate 15 years ago or so, and that is what's going on in California and Washington State high school sporting events right now, where guys are just openly replacing the women in their own sports. It just can only be the amount of excesses that people have been exposed to on our side is what's creating this backlash. What are your thoughts?
Couple of things. First of all, I'll go back to the basis. When we were debating this issue about same-sex marriage versus biblical marriage, the key question the left always asked was, how's it going to impact you? Mm-hmm. I mean, why are you so afraid of Todd and Steve getting married? Why are you so afraid of Mary and Betty getting married? How's this going to impact you and Darla? And I'd say, listen, it's not going to impact me and Darla. Our marriage is going to be just fine. But I'm concerned about the ripple effect. A little bit what Justice Sotomayor talked about, Steve, when she was, in the Obergefell case, saying, if you take the parameters of marriage off of one man, one woman, what does it lead to? Now, she obviously came up with the wrong answer on that.
Yeah, she asked that, then voted for it anyway.
And then voted for it.
Yeah.
But it's a fair question because too many of Christians, too many people of faith, too many conservatives said, I think they're right. It's not going to impact me at all. Go ahead, get married. What do I care? Now, all of a sudden, it's, hey, they're in my daughter's restroom, my daughter's locker room. They're competing against my daughter in athletics, and they're beating my daughter in athletics, and they're doing all these crazy things. We don't even know what a boy and a girl are anymore. And I really believe what's happening, Steve, is people are now beginning to connect the dots. You unravel an institution of one man, one woman marriage, biblical marriage, and all of a sudden you get all heck breaks loose. So if you want to stop all heck breaking loose, go back to God's order, to God's design. What's interesting, the guy, when you were on WHO radio, you did drive time in the afternoon. The guy that did drive time in the morning was Jan Michelson. Mm-hmm. Jan Michelson had me on, his radio program one morning. He said, I want you to spike the football in the end zone. And this was well before all the other craziness that we've encountered. Spike the football in the end zone because what you forecasted is actually happening. So maybe this becomes the boomerang where we go back to marriage the way God designed it to be. And take a look at what happens when order happens. Chuck Hurley, our VP of Elections and Policy, he just told our team, he said, you know what? If you graduate from high school, if you get a job, if you get married, and then if you have kids, in that order, he goes, you have less than a 2% chance of being in poverty in this country. But when you violate that order, look what happens. And so I think this is kind of a natural reckoning of a country that said, we turned our back on marriage, and take a look at what happens to your culture.
We are having an interesting conversation on the right this weekend that up until now I have not taken part in because I know who Glenn Greenwald is. He's just not really of interest to me because I know who he is, and I can find ways. I will. I can't pick the Secretary of the Treasury. I can't do that, right? All right. So it just so happened that Trump picked an open homosexual who is quote unquote married to be his Secretary of Treasury. Not the pick I would have made. I'm not empowered to make that pick, right? But as we have noted before, we're being somewhat tongue in cheek, but when we say Scott Bessent is number one right now in our homo Treasury Secretary power ratings, he's number one, okay, because there's nobody else, right? But he is doing a legitimately good job.
Sure he is.
All right. So as long as you are not asking me to endorse you,
right, you are
not using your position to impose your worldview on me or others. Okay, that's now where I am a sinner too, and I need saving too. As Paul says to the church in Corinth, liars, thieves, adulterers, homosexuals, murderers, fornicators, slanderers, none of these will inherit the kingdom of heaven. But such as once were you. Such as once were you on that list. Such as once was I on that list. Such as once was everybody within the sound of my voice who has ever lived is somewhere on that list. Somewhere, right? And so...
And Paul was on that list.
Paul himself was on that list. So, therefore, I will love my neighbor as I love myself. I will validate him using his God-given talents and abilities for a greater cause. And I'm not empowered to do anything about that. And so therefore, I can find common ground with Scott Bessent as long as he's willing to find it with me. All right. In the case of Glenn Greenwald, I can get all the same kinds of reporting that he does from someone. I can voluntarily go find sources that do not require me promoting his worldview and belief system. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's a level of baggage, sort of like the Tate brothers, basically. I don't need to absorb that level of baggage. They don't offer me enough that justifies overlooking that amount of baggage. Okay, so Greenwald, for those of you that don't know, he's more of a social media thing. But if you're not on there, Glenn is a reporter of some renown. Used to be a very, very left-wing reporter. Started a company called The Intercept. It went even more left-wing than him. He essentially left, started his own thing. He has been propagated on a lot of very popular conservative media platforms, not this one, as kind of a truth-telling reporter. He's not any kind of a conservative, but he has, from what I can see from afar, he has, for the most part, been fairly solid in his reporting. He also has a homosexual husband. They've adopted children. Video came out over the weekend of him smoking meth with a 19-year-old male prostitute on video, with all kinds of kinks and everything else being displayed. And his response essentially was, hey, we were consenting adults. I have nothing to be ashamed of. And this has caused fratricide on the right. Okay. We've got even people, I won't even name them, because I don't want to drag myself into the middle of their fight, but I've got people I know that I am friends with or friendly with that are on complete opposite sides of this and going back and forth. All right. But I think one of the best descriptions of the problem here, I think actually is something I read our colleague Liz Wheeler wrote this morning. And what she said, and what made me think about it is when you use the term order. Because Glenn Greenwald tried to come back to one of our colleagues, Jason Whitlock, and say, hey, you guys have overlooked Trump's sexual escapades to support him. Why can't you do the same thing for me? And Jason pointed out to him, listen, Trump's sexual escapades got him into trouble, even though trying to put somebody in prison for not reporting a measly $25,000 hush payment to a porn star, that's not worth a 97-year prison sentence that they were trying to do last summer. The truth of the matter is, if Trump never puts himself in that situation, they have to come up with something else. And I think we all know, though, they probably would have.
They would have.
Okay? All right. But Liz's point is that Trump's chosen way to act out sinfully, while sinful, there's no the sexuality he is acting upon. He is taking it to sin. He in the past has taken it to sinful extensions, but in and of itself, that does not cause disorder in a society on a fundamental level. and what she said to Greenwald is, what you want us to advocate does. You want us to completely rechange. There was no adultery, Pride Month. There was no adultery. Here's how to commit better forms of adultery in the schools. No curriculum for that. Okay, I mean, no teacher in there saying, hey, I'm an adulterer on TikTok, saying I'm an adulterer and fornicator, and I can't wait to teach your kindergarten kids how to do the same thing. Okay, that there's a certain. I mean, if a man says, if a male teacher walked into a school and said, I'm a heterosexual that wants to show all the kindergarten girls all the porn I love to watch at home, we'd get rid of him right away.
Amen.
If a man walks into that same school and says, I'm a homosexual, here's some gay porn books I want to put in your library, well, we don't want to be book burners and have to allow it. And what Liz's point is, the amount of disordering that this causes. You force us now, because of the chosen way you have chosen to sin, you are forcing us to re-examine the entirety of society, to completely disorder everything so that there are no more barriers on literally anything. And as Matt Walsh was saying right before the break about the Glenn Greenwald story was, why is it okay that the guy is smoking meth in the same home where he's got 2 adopted kids? Why is this okay? All right. And again, there would be no defense of Glenn Greenwald if he were straight. If he were straight with a 19-year-old hooker dressed as a maid,
you'd remove the kids.
They'd remove the kids over this.
Yeah.
And he's smoking meth in the same home. That's what would happen. But because he's gay, we have to disorder everything that we know is right and wrong. That's exactly what Liz, I thought, very eloquently discussed here today.
You see, this is the first time hearing about the Greenwald, so it's going to be awfully hard for me to comment on it. However, what you're saying, Steve, is we enter into June, Pride Month, is the whole deal about what you said a long time ago on WHO radio and then since on The Blaze. You will be made to care. I mean, you have to adopt this lifestyle. And if you don't adopt this lifestyle, you're going to lose your job, you're going to get shunned, you're going to be shamed, but you need to adopt this lifestyle. So therefore, we need to rewrite the curriculum. We need to reorder the month of June, because that whole month now is for Pride. And that's why I think, Steve, your book that just came out, Richie Meets the Rainbow, I think it's a wake-up call. I honestly think what President Trump has done, along with Vivek Ramaswamy, along with Elon Musk, is saying, listen, this DEI nonsense, it's killing us. And so what you're seeing corporate America back away from their support of Pride Month. And I don't think they're coming back because they see what this has happened. So, Steve, and we've used that argument a long time, is that, and I've said it to pastors, if they knew that I was having an extramarital affair on Darla, I'd have pastors intervene immediately and going, you know what, Bob, that's going to wreck your marriage. However, for some reason, we can't speak out on other issues. I mean, like if it relates to the gay issue or homosexual issue or whatever the issue is, also we have to give that a pass. No, you still need to be clear, and be clear with Scripture as well. You can love your neighbors yourself, but one of the best ways to love your neighbors yourself is speak the truth. Because, you know, what I think 1 Corinthians 13 says, love does not rejoice with evil, but only with the truth.